are we doing this morning?
Great.
I don't know where in the world. I look around and see beads on the floor. I don't know where in the world these came from. How are we doing this morning? I have more. Oh, okay. Everybody say good morning to Mr. Mugg.
Good morning.
Mr. Mugg, yes. He's our mascot for this series. So, over the last really month, we have been discussing a condition that we all have, and when I say that, in the fact that all of us, I think we've discovered at one time or another, have been Mr. Mugg. You know, all of us have had one of those moments to where, you know, at some point, in some way, where we are, you know, whether we get kind of stressed out, or whether we're frustrated, or whether we're tired, or we get too comfortable, or we get too complacent, that in that moment, all of a sudden, there is something that just comes flying out of us, okay? And, you know, and afterwards, and it may be, it's a couple different things. It may be, you know, we say a word that we normally would never ever say, at least in front of our parents, or our kids, or our preacher, you know, and you know, or we do so. It's kind of like fly off the handle. We let somebody at work just absolutely have it, you know, or at the grocery store, or you know, we go off and we do something that we would normally never ever do, something that's so unlike us. And in those moments, what we throw our hands up to our mouth, and what do we always say? We say what? I don't know what got into me. Or I don't know where that came from. That's so unlike me. And what we have discovered, the truth that we've really been going through the course of the series, is that this is, you know, it's nothing new. You know, in fact, I was thinking about this. Anybody notice? I don't know if you watch news or whatever. It's funny to listen to all of I call them the political pundits, that they take and they try to pick apart every single word that any politician, candidate, whatever says. Okay? And then what do they always, all of them want to be able to sit on that panel and say, this is who he, she, they really are. This is what he, she, they really want to do. And you know, I got to thinking, why is it they say that? They say that because the truth that all of us know, and that is that eventually our filters fail. Okay? These things, if you squeeze a lemon, you get what? Lemon juice. You squeeze a grape, you get grape juice. When we are squeezed, whether it's through exhaustion or complacency or stress or whatever, who we are at our core is what comes out. Okay? And so a lot of we look at people and we're waiting for those words, for those actions, for those things that they do so that we can say, aha! That's who they are at their core. Because we know eventually all of our filters will fail. And like I said, this is nothing new. Jesus, was talking about this 2,000 years ago. Matthew chapter 12, verse 34, he said, for out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. And what he's talking about is the fact that, as we've learned, every one of us, deep down inside us, we have a place called our heart, not the muscle that pumps blood all over your body, but it is that place inside us that who we are comes from. Our heart is who we are. We act from our heart, lead from our heart, parent from our heart, love from our heart. Everything we do comes from that kind of that hidden place that is inside us. And what Jesus is saying is that, you know, when we say those things, do those things that we say are so unlike us, and we don't know where it came from, we don't know what got into us, he says, I do. It came out of your heart. That's where it came from. And the problem is that what have we learned throughout the course of our lives? We have learned that when those things happen, when we say those things, that what we really need to do is we need to focus on building a better filter. We need to focus more on ways to keep it inside. Because we don't want people to see it, to hear it, to know about it, and so we build better failures to keep it inside. Better filters to keep it inside. But what we find is that the Bible says time and time again, we're focusing on the wrong thing. Instead of focusing on a better filter to keep that stuff down, we need to focus on the source of where it's coming from. And we need to work on cleaning that junk out of our heart and keeping that junk out of our heart. And so that is what we have been looking at for the last month. Today, we're going to deal kind of with our last really topic, and then next week we're going to come back and kind of tie the whole thing together. But we're going to talk one today that it is probably, I think it's one of the uglier conditions and attitudes, especially in the effect that it has on us. And what's interesting is this is one that everybody sees it and everybody senses it, but we're usually blind to it, and it's one that impacts us the most personally. And I'm curious, if I were going to take a poll, you don't have to raise your hands, but I think if I were to take a poll and to ask who in this room has had someone hurt them, since all of the little kids went to the back, everybody would raise their hand. Because, I'm serious. Because the fact is that if you're older than like 3 or 4 years, you've been hurt. I mean, if you're older than 3 or 4 years of age, you have been hurt by someone. Okay? Something has happened to you. It's the way that it is. You have been injured. It may have been something that was... maybe somebody did something to you on purpose. Maybe somebody said something about you that wasn't true. Maybe they said something about you that was true, but they only knew it because you told it to them in confidence, and now they're telling everybody else about it. You know, they may have hurt you physically. They may have hurt you emotionally. They may have anything. The thing is that if we were to ask, I think that every one of us in this room, we've got something. We have a hurt. Some of you, chances are, in a room of this size, there are some of you right now that you have a hurt that is right on the front of your heart. It is recent, it is painful, it is new, and it really, certain topics, certain people, certain, movies, it just brings it bubbling up to the surface. Some of you, your hurt is in the past. It may be recent past, it may be more distant past, but you know what you've kind of done is that at the time that it happened, you were hurt, it was painful, but then you kind of over the maybe days or weeks or months, you just learned to kind of push it down. You've tried to just push it down as far as you can and repress it in a way to bury it underneath everything else. And it to some extent it kind of works. It enables you to function on a day-to-day basis. You kind of go along and it's not really a big deal, but the fact is that all it takes is something to be said or something to happen, and all of a sudden what happens, those emotions and all of that pain and all of that hurt comes bubbling up to the surface, and suddenly you're right back into, you have the same anger, you have the same pain, you have the same feelings that you had all the other, it's just right there, all of a sudden again, okay? And the reason and this is the reason that I think we have to deal with this issue of, and what we're talking about today, it's an attitude of unforgiveness. Because we've all been hurt. And I know that it's easier said than done, okay? But we have all got to learn how to forgive. Nelson Mandela said this: unforgiveness is like drinking poison and then hoping it will kill your enemies. See, I think we need to understand is that unforgiveness never has the effect on other people that we want it to. But it has an effect on us that we never desired it to. It will eat us alive. But I want to kind of, if you remember last week, I said, the 4, whether you want to call them attitudes, whether you want to call them monsters, these things that are within us that tend to come out. 4 of them can be described, and we looked at 3, can be best described as a debtor relationship. And I think it's huge for us to be able to understand it, because only when we kind of understand it that way can we begin to deal with it as we should. Greed says what? I owe me. That's what greed's all about. I owe me. Okay? Jealousy says God owes me. We have talked about the fact that guilt says I owe you. I owe you something. I did something to you. Unforgiveness says you owe me. You owe me. That's what unforgiveness is all about. And I'll say, before we really kind of dig in, this is a message that, and this is where the pushback comes, because A message on forgiveness comes with a bunch of buts. There's a bunch of buts in the room. I know there is. But Jeff, you don't understand what they did to me. But you don't understand what kind of people they really are. But you don't know how painful it was. But you don't know what they were trying to do. But you don't know, but you don't. Whole lot of buts come with this message. Don't they? We've all got excuses. We've all got reasons. And I will be the first one to admit, there's a good chance I don't know. I probably don't know everything that they did to you. I probably don't know all the situation, all of the circumstances. I probably don't know what you had to endure. I probably don't know how painful it was. I will be the first one to admit that. But what I do know is that if you continue to allow unforgiveness and that anger to fester in your heart, it will eat you alive. It will destroy you from the inside out. And that's the reason that we have got to deal with it. We got to deal with it now. Does anybody remember the movie Backdraft? Excuse me. Who saw it? Okay, good. Backdraft, if you did not see it, the kind of the theme of Backdraft, there's an arsonist that is targeting firefighters. And what he would do, is he would start a fire that would really kind of smolder. Okay, and it would be in this room, it would smolder, it would sit there, and basically it would suck all of the oxygen out of the room. And the way that he targeted firefighters was by the fact that then when they came to put out the fire to see where the smoke was coming from, they would open the door and in would come this fresh batch of oxygen, and boom! It would blow. And it would destroy everything in its path, set it all on fire. And here's the thing that you need to understand when it comes to unforgiveness and allowing it, because what we do is we carry this unforgiveness from one season of our life to another, and a lot of us, honestly, we're not even sure where it came from. Okay, we don't even think about the event. We don't even, that's not on the front of our mind. What we know is just there's this anger. There is just this, ooh, I'm short fused. We come to even believe that's just who I am. Okay? Because we don't necessarily identify it with a particular thing. But what happens then is that it sits there in our heart and it smolders and it smolders and it consumes all of the oxygen and all of the life in our heart. And you know what happens then? Suddenly something happens. And there is this fresh moment of anger, of rage, of frustration. Something happens. Somebody shows up. Somebody says something. We watch that movie. Somebody brings up that name and boom! It blows all over again. Because now you've got this fresh batch of anger that just sets everything off. And it will. It will not only destroy your heart, but you know what the thing is? That most of the time, it ends up blowing up and impacting the relationships that don't even know what's going on. They're not even a part of it. Never were and never have been. And that's the thing is that when we start to talk about forgiveness, I think we have a hard time understanding. I want to back up here a second. I think one of the first things in understanding how to forgive is that we've got to understand what forgiveness is not. Okay? Forgiveness is not watering down the offense. Forgiveness is not saying that it didn't hurt, that it really didn't bother, that it was no big deal. That's not what forgiveness is about. That's denial. And I'm not talking about the river Egypt. It's a coping mechanism. That's all it is. It is you trying to make yourself and other people, you trying to make yourself feel better, but trying to convince yourself and other people that it really wasn't such a big deal. That's all it is. And it's not true. One of the other coping mechanisms, I think, a lot of times is that we pretend that it never happened. Okay, we want to pretend that it never ever happened. Oh, if I forget, just pretend that it never ever happened. But it did happen. And it was a big deal. It is a a big deal. And here's the thing. So many times we try to pretend that it either didn't happen or it was no big deal. And when we do that, so we try to kind of repress it and we put it back. And the thing is, though, but it did happen. It does impact who we are. And the problem is that then we end up being angry and we end up focusing it all on people who had nothing to do with it. And we talk about how it destroys relationships. And this is where seeing this kind of in the context of the debt-debtor relationship is huge. Okay? Because chances are the reason that you are angry, the reason you get upset, the reason that you get mad about certain situations and certain people, and the reason that certain conversations will stir up these ugly, angry, feelings inside of you is because deep down inside, you believe somewhere, you've got somebody that you would like to be able to look at and say, you owe me. You owe me. You did something to me, and I want you to repay it. And like I said, for a lot of us, this is the scary part about it. For a lot of us, we don't even really know who it is that we think owes us. We just think somebody does. I mean, it may have been so long ago what happened to us. I mean, like I said, it's not on the forefront of our mind. It's not something that we think about all of the time. It's not like we're walking around constantly, oh, I can't believe so-and-so. I mean, that's not what it is. We pushed it down. It's become so much a part of who we are that we just have a constant attitude of, they owe me. And we don't even remember necessarily, we remember the event, but we don't necessarily tie it to everything. We just have a short fuse. We're just angry. We just have these things that bother us, and they bring up this in us, and we're not even sure what it is. Okay? And the thing is that if we were to dig deep down inside, I think we would all come to that point of going, my problem is that 10 years ago, or when I was a child, or this happened to me, and I've never been able to get past it. I've never been able to forgive. And as a result, that has continued to fester and to grow in my heart. And it's turned from so much of that attitude of unforgiveness turns to an attitude of anger. And the dangerous thing is that, we've talked so many times about how when we harbor that in our heart and we allow it to grow and fester, that so many times when it does blow, okay, when what is inside us comes flying out, it's usually directed at people who had nothing to do with the reason we're upset. They had nothing to do with it, okay? But the fact is, one of the most dangerous places is that so many times unforgiveness in our heart leads to an attitude of anger and sometimes outright hostility towards God. And there's where it impacts our relationship with our Heavenly Father as well. And so, the Bible, though, tells us that that's not how it should be. In fact, Matthew chapter 6, Jesus says this, says, if you forgive men when they sin against you, your Heavenly Father will also forgive you. I thought Ron was going to start just stepping all over my message. But if you do not forgive men their sins, your Father will not forgive your sins. The Lord's Prayer tells us to do the same, to forgive us as we forgive others. In Matthew 18, Jesus tells the parable of the unmerciful servant and says, you know what? He goes, the things that we've been forgiven of so many times are nothing close to what we have been forgiven of. And this is where sometimes you end up, and this message turns into a, you better, or he won't. And then we hear that, don't we? We get that direction. Oh, you better! Because if you don't, he won't. If you do, he will. And I want you to see this from a little bit different direction, okay? And because what you need to understand, what we all need to understand, let me back up. I say you, what we need to understand is the fact that if we run around with an attitude of unforgiveness with a list of counts in our heart that say, you owe me, and you owe me, and you owe me, and you owe me. It does nothing but make us bitter and angry, and it grows. If we keep holding grudges and refusing to forgive, the thing we need to understand, you know what? It only hurts us. We're the only person that gets hurt by that, by carrying that burden around. Because all it does, like I said, it makes you angry, it makes you angry, it makes you bitter, it leads to ulcers and heart attacks and addictions and broken marriages and broken relationships. That's all it does. Okay? It doesn't accomplish what we want. I mean, I went back and Tammy wouldn't let me. I'm going to forgive her though. No, I really didn't ask, but could you imagine James Bond taking cyanide and hoping that it would kill his enemy? But isn't that what we do? That's what unforgiveness is. We swallow this and we keep it inside and we hope that somehow it's going to hurt them. Oh, I'm going to hold on to this grudge and I'm drinking milk and magnesia and whatever stuff because my stomach is just, it's driving me nuts. Oh, every relationship in my life is falling apart, but oh by golly, I'm going to teach him. Where did we get this idea? That's why Nelson's Mandela quote, it's so right on. But here's where I want to kind of take this in a little bit of a different direction. Because Ephesians chapter 4, we read this. Verse 26 says, do not let the sun go down while you are still angry, and do not give the devil a foothold. I know what you're thinking, well, that's the marriage advice that they give everybody that they, don't go to bed angry. And it is. And it's good advice. But that's not what we're talking about today. About 7 years ago, I had a guy that came in and was looking for premarital counseling. He was looking to get married. He was engaged, but he was really struggling with some stuff. And what kind of came down to was the fact that when he was in his 20s, he was taken advantage of financially by some relatives of his. They took advantage of him financially. It kind of ruined the track of his life, where he wanted to go. The bad part about it was that they did it out of spite, plain and simple. And the thing was that it was, as we were talking, like I said, it didn't take long to figure out that this was causing problems with him currently in his relationship with his fiancée. And so he had come for the purpose of it, and we sat down to start talking about how to be able to deal with some of this, to work through, this next stage in life of trying to lay a healthy spiritual foundation. And that was the goal. We met for probably about a month. We met on Tuesdays, and the thing was, every time we would start talking about his relationship now, we always ended up, he would go back to, what they had done to him and how bad they had hurt him and how this had set that and it had done that. And it was just, every time we always ended up back there. And so I was meeting with him, and I went out and I got one of those calendars, with the Bible verse on every month. And it's got a pretty picture of, I guess it had mountains on it. And, and I gave it to him, and I told him to sit down. I said, before we get started, I need you to do me a favor, pick a date. He says, date? For what? And I said, just pick a date somewhere in the future. A date for what? I said, I need you to pick the date that you are going to stop allowing those people to control your life and to destroy your happiness. And then we'll move forward. And then I woke up from my dream, because that didn't work. I would love to say that I said those words. There's times I've thought those words, but they seem less than pastoral to say in a one-on-one basis. So I say them to you in a group basis. The fact is that you and I have got to decide to make the decision that we are going to cancel the debt. This is where this all comes back to the fact that, if we're talking about a debt or relationship, we need to understand that we think somebody owes us something. And there's a lot of you got real issues. You have had a lot of pain. You've had a lot of hurt that has been dumped on you in the course of your life. There are things that you have gone through, and there's a good chance that if we were to sit here today, and you were to come up here and you were to tell us all your story, that at the end of it we would say, I had no idea. I didn't know it was that bad. I had no idea that you went through that. I didn't know that your father did that to you. I didn't know that your mother said that to you. I didn't know that you endured that as a child. I didn't know that you had to go through that for so many years. And chances are, there's even a chance that out of a desire to be empathetic, that we might even say these words to you: you deserve to be angry. You deserve to be upset. Wouldn't we? We might even say that. We might even go so far, you hear people all the time talking about hanging on to their anger. Why? Because it drives them to be the person that they wanted to be. And as much as that might vindicate you in the moment, as much as that might make you feel better right then and right there, I think what we all know is that is the worst possible advice that we could ever give. Because I think what we all know deep down inside is that if we could magically get outside of our body and we could look and see the person that our unforgiveness and our anger has made us into, if we could somehow see the pain and the torment and the ugliness that it has created inside, we wouldn't wish that on anybody else, let alone ourselves, would we? And this is the scary, maybe the infuriating part of it. There's a good chance that the person who hurt you, the person who abused you, the person who left you, the person who manipulated you, lied to you, they don't even know how much their actions impacted you then or how much they impact you to this day. They don't even know it. And so you hate them, and you swallowed all of this, and they don't even know you're that miserable. And that is the infuriating part of all of this, because, and even if they did, even if they knew, even if they were to find out, okay, and they were to come to you, and they were to say, I'm sorry, I had no idea, if they were to understand how much they had hurt you, and they were to say, I had no idea how much it hurt. I now realize how badly I hurt you when I left. I realize how badly I hurt you when I did that, when I said that, when I did these things. And they were to look you in the eyes and with all of their heart to say, what can I do to make it up to you? I think we all know that in most cases, what's the answer? Nothing. There's nothing that they can do to make it up to you or to make it right. There's nothing that they can do to make up for the years that they took from you. There's nothing that they can do to make up for the years that they were never at home, the things they said to you, the things they did to you. They can't make up for it. And this is where understanding the whole debt-debtor relationship comes full circle. Because if they can't make it up to you, if they cannot make it right, what's the only option left? You got to cancel the debt. You got to close the account. Not them, not anybody else. You have to close the account and come to a point of saying, you don't owe me anything anymore. Once again, this is not about minimizing. This is not about forgetting. This is not about any of those things. This is about you and I being able to look him in the eye and say, you hurt me. You hurt me badly. But you know what? You don't have to beg. I don't need you to beg. I don't need you to suffer. I don't need you to fail. I don't need you to do any of those things. You need to know I don't need anything from you anymore. You don't owe me. That's what forgiveness is. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. We always like to say that, forgive and forget, forgive and forget. No. God forgives and forgets. You and I are not God. But you know, in Romans there is a passage and it says, it talks about blessed is the man whose sins are forgiven. The last one, it says, blessed is the man whose sins the Lord does not hold against him. See, that's what forgiveness is about. Forgiveness is not about lessening it. Forgiveness is not about watering it down. Forgiveness is not about pretending that it never happened. Because there is no grace in that. Forgiveness is saying, you don't owe me anything anymore. I'm not going to wait around for you to fail. I'm not going to wait around for you to come begging. I'm not going to let my happiness be dependent upon whether or not you have a good life or a bad life, or whether you are financially sound or not financially sound. I'm not going to let my happiness and my forgiveness be dependent upon you, because right now in this moment I make the decision that you don't owe me anything anymore. And like I said, this is where all the buts come out, because but you don't know. Have you been forgiven of things that you don't deserve to be forgiven of? We are to forgive as we have been forgiven. I want you to think about this for a second. Van goes walking in. Yeah. There 3+ years ago. The first question my dad asked when he was told that he had mantle cell lymphoma was not, how in the world did I get it? His first question was, how do I get rid of it? What do I need to do to stop this cancer in my body? What do I need to do to get this cancer out of me so that it does not destroy and kill me? There's time later on to ask how I got it. There's time later on to ask those questions. And it's, you walk in and you go to the doctor and you're told that you have cancer. That's not your first question, is it? No, your first question is, how do we get rid of it? What do we do today to get it out of my body? Yet we turn around, though, when it comes to this anger and this unforgiveness that is festering in our hearts. What's the first question? It's not even a question. It's a statement. Well, but they did this to me. They hurt me. They said, they lied, they told me. You know what? That's not even the issue anymore, is it? The issue is the unforgiveness, the anger that is festering in your heart. That's what you've got to clean out. That's what you've got to clear out, because that is what will eat you alive. And that is what will destroy you if you allow it to. And so I do want to give you, we talk about these types of things, and everybody's like, well, that's great and that's wonderful, so how do I do it? I want to give you a couple of options. I want to give you a couple of thoughts. For one, the first step is that you need to spend some time in prayer. You need to get alone with Jesus, and you need to talk to Him. And you lay out to Him the pain and the hurt. And I would tell you to do this, because like I said, I think a lot of us, we don't necessarily know where it came from. Ask God to open our eyes to see the people that we are carrying that attitude around about. God, show me the people that I blame. Show me the people that I feel owe me something. And let Him bring that to the surface. And I know that's not always easy. We don't like to do that because we don't like this stuff bubbling up. And so we don't want that to happen, but that's the first place that it's got to start. And then you got to ask Him at the same time, when He's opening your eyes and to these situations, to the things that you need to forgive about, to also begin to work on your heart, to soften your heart, to prepare your heart, to be able to let it go, to be able to say, you don't owe me anything anymore. to be able to close the account. Because that's what you're going to have to do. And I know that for many of us, sometimes this is tough. And it's tough for a couple of reasons. For some of you, the person that hurts you, you can't talk to them anymore. You don't know where they are. They're gone. They're dead. They're whatever. There is no chance for you to go to them and to forgive them. You can't do it. And if that's the case, you may have to get a little bit creative. Maybe that means that you need to sit down and you need to write them a letter. And once again, don't whitewash it. Don't minimize it. No, you need to say in that letter, this is what you did to me. This is how I felt. This is the effect that it has had on me. But I'm not holding you accountable anymore. This is not you anymore. Maybe you need to sit down in front of an empty chair and you need to say it to them. That you need to talk to that chair and tell it exactly how you felt. Some of you, you can't see that person. And they need to know that you have moved on and that you're forgiving them. And maybe that happens. Maybe it's face-to-face. Maybe it's through a phone call. Maybe it happens through a letter. I don't know. Every situation is different. And I want to say this. If you're sitting here right now and in the middle of this message, you're thinking, oh, man, I'm carrying this and I've got to deal with this and I've got... But you don't know how, come see me. Come see one of our elders. Talk to them. We would be more than welcome and more than happy to sit down, to talk to you, to pray with you, to help you find the way to begin clearing this junk out of your heart. Because the fact is that as long as we allow that to fester and to grow, it's going to have an impact on every one of our relationships. As long as we allow it to fester and to grow, it's going to suck out not only the oxygen, but it will suck every bit of life out of our heart. And when we have new anger or new offenses, we're going to blow. And we're going to blow and impact people that had nothing to do with that thing that happened to us 20 years ago. And our relationships today are going to be destroyed by something that happened 5 years ago. And that's not what your Heavenly Father wants for you. Forgiveness is what we receive. And because we receive it, we got to know how to give it. We got to learn how to give it. And when we do not carry that around in our heart, we are truly able to embrace and to realize the depth of God's love for us and His willingness to forgive us, even though all of our junk far outweighs what's been done. I'm going to ask you to stand. We're going to have our time of decision. And we're going to open up our prayer rooms. Ron talked about it. We're going to open up the prayer rooms. And if you're here today and you have somebody that you need to forgive, you have somebody that's on your mind, you see their face, and you know that you need to forgive them, you know that you need to start that process, but you don't know where to start, how to start, what to do, I'm just going to ask you, step into one of those rooms, one of our elders, one of their wives would be willing to pray with you. You don't have to say a thing. All you got to do is go in and say, I need prayer. And they will pray with you. Maybe you're here today and see this whole thing of forgiveness kind of rings distant to you because you have never made that step to accept the forgiveness of God that is found through Jesus Christ. You've never made Him your Lord and Savior. You have never asked Him to forgive you of your sins. You've never asked Him to be your Lord and Savior. And I want to say that if that is the case, the first step in being able to forgive others is to understand what you have been forgiven of. To understand how much He loves you and the length that He was willing to go to save you, to redeem you, and spend eternity with you. I want to invite you, if you have a decision, please make it now.